I'd seen her plenty of times before, always at a distance, watering the small pots of rosemary and mint on her balcony, or returning from work with her hair pinned back and her shoulders squared like someone who doesn't want to be read. Mrs. Keller, everyone called her. I knew she hated that name. I hated thinking it, too. She wasn't some faceless neighbor. She was the reason I took the stairwell instead of the elevator, hoping for a chance encounter. That morning was pale and quiet. A late spring drizzle had left the pavement slick, and the smell of wet earth drifted up through the courtyard. I'd been sitting on my own balcony with a mug of coffee gone cold, scrolling through nothing on my phone, when her window slid open. She leaned out just enough for her voice to carry. "Join me for coffee?" she called, not loud, but enough to slice through the hum of rain. For a heartbeat, I thought she was talking to someone else. Then her eyes locked on mine. They were steady but softer than usual, like she was testing how far her invitation would travel. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because the way she said it made the air feel heavier. Inside her apartment smelled of warm spices and something floral. A half-empty mug sat on the counter. She gestured toward the chair at the small round table, and I sat down like a guest in a museum. Her kitchen light was dim, casting her face in an amber glow that made every line around her mouth seem like a secret rather than an age. "I wasn't sure you'd say yes," she said, turning her back to rinse a spoon. The casualness in her voice was too casual. She gripped the spoon longer than needed. "I wasn't sure you wanted me to," I answered, trying for lightness but hearing my own voice tighten. She smiled, not at me, exactly, but at something in her mind, and placed a fresh mug in front of me. When our fingers brushed over the handle, she didn't pull away right away. Just a second too long, enough for my skin to register it. The rain pressed harder against the window. She asked about my classes, about the part-time job I'd picked up. Her questions came quick and neat, but she barely answered mine. When I asked about her weekend plans, she only shrugged, staring into her mug. "You're quiet today," I said. "Am I?" Her eyes flicked up, then down again. "Maybe I like listening." There was something brittle under her words. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, but her hand trembled slightly, like she'd been holding back a different conversation entirely. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to pretend with me, but what right did I have? I was just a neighbor kid, 22, who'd carried her groceries once and couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd said thank you. The silence stretched until it wasn't silence anymore but a current between us. I noticed her lips, the faint smudge of lipstick, a tiny crease at one corner. She caught me looking and didn't look away. For a moment neither of us moved. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, a sharp little vibration that made her flinch. She turned it over without reading the screen. Her gaze returned to me, steadier now, but something unspoken sat in it, a question, a dare, I couldn't name. Before I could ask, the sound of a doorbell echoed from the hallway. Not hers. Mine. She looked toward my door, then back at me, eyes narrowing just slightly. "You should get that," she whispered. I didn't move. I never did answer the door. Whoever it was went away after a few knocks, leaving only the rain and the smell of her cinnamon coffee between us. She was still standing near the counter, one hand on the edge as if bracing herself. "You're not going to check?" she asked. "It can wait." Something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe a little alarm. Then she relaxed, exhaling slowly. She slid into the chair opposite me, folding her arms. The sleeve of her sweater slipped, revealing a pale line of skin at her wrist. "You know I used to have a son your age," she said quietly. "He's at college now. I still forget sometimes he's not a kid." "You don't talk about him much," I said. "I don't talk about a lot of things." Her smile was small, self-mocking. "People like their neighbors tidy and uncomplicated." I'd known she was separated, but not much more. Seeing her there, a little undone, hair damp from the rain. She looked less like the unreachable woman on the balcony and more like someone fighting to keep her own footing. I told her about my last girlfriend, how she'd called me, too careful, before leaving for another city. I hadn't planned to mention it, it just came out. Mrs. Keller, no, Lena, she'd said once I could call her Lena, listened without interrupting. Her eyes softened, not with pity, but recognition. "You're young," she murmured. "You have time to make mistakes." "And you?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her gaze dropped to her mug. "I already made mine." A pause. "And I'm still paying for them." The space between us thickened. I thought about the ring she no longer wore, about the way she'd flinched at that text earlier. This wasn't just a coffee invitation. This was a crack in a wall she'd built for years. And I was standing on the wrong side of it, wanting in. I tried to swallow it down, to be polite, but the thoughts came anyway, her hand brushing mine earlier, the way her voice dipped when she said my name. It felt like leaning too far over a balcony rail, thrilling and dangerous, and my body already tipping forward. She stood up to refill our mugs even though they were still half full. Her back to me, she said, "You shouldn't stay too long. People talk." I almost laughed, but the tremor in her voice stopped me. "Do you care what they say?" She turned, mug in hand, and for the first time didn't look away. Our eyes held. She set the mug down slowly, fingers brushing mine again, not an accident this time. A small, deliberate graze that sent a jolt up my arm. Either of us spoke. The rain softened against the window. Her hand stayed near mine on the table, not touching but close enough to feel the warmth. That was the moment I realized either of us wanted to pull back. By the next afternoon, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. Just coffee. Just neighbors. But when I heard a soft knock on my door and opened it to find Lena standing there with 2 paper bags, her hair still damp from a shower, my chest went tight again. "Leftovers," she said. "Thought you might like them." She stepped inside before I'd fully moved back. The scent of her perfume, clean, citrusy, replaced the air in my apartment. She set the bags on the counter like she belonged there. "You didn't have to," I said. "I know." She brushed her hands on her jeans, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't want the food to go to waste." We stood there for a moment, both pretending to be casual. Then a voice came from the hallway, a man's voice, low but distinct. She stiffened. Through the open door I glimpsed a tall figure heading toward the elevator, a gym bag slung over his shoulder. He glanced in as he passed, first at me, then at her. No greeting, but a flicker of recognition. My stomach nodded. "Who was that?" I asked quietly after the man disappeared. "My husband," she said, almost inaudible. "Ex-husband. Technically." She shut the door firmly and leaned against it, closing her eyes for a second. "He still drops by sometimes. Papers. Mail. Old habits." I didn't know what to say. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls too thin. "Do people know?" "Some. Not about this." She opened her eyes and looked at me, sharp, almost pleading. "Because there isn't anything to know." "Right." I nodded, but my pulse was pounding. She took a step toward me, then another, stopping just short. Her fingers hovered near my sleeve, not touching. "This is wrong," she whispered. "It can't be more than coffee." "Then why are you here?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her breath hitched. "Because I don't know how to stop." Silence, heavy and brittle. The hum of the fridge, the faint drip of a faucet. She reached for the bag on the counter, but her hand shook, scattering a few napkins onto the floor. We both bent to pick them up, and suddenly our faces were inches apart. I could see the tiny freckles on her nose, the tremor at the corner of her mouth. "We can't," she murmured, but she didn't move back. Her eyes darted from my lips to my eyes and back again, as if testing a door she knew she shouldn't open. The hallway outside creaked, someone passing, and she jolted upright, shoving the napkins into the bag. "I should go," she said, voice breaking on the last word. I followed her to the door. She hesitated with her hand on the knob, then, without looking at me, let her fingers slip down to my wrist, a quick, warm pressure, gone almost as soon as it came. She left without another word. The door clicked shut, leaving her touch on my skin like an afterimage. I didn't see her for 2 days after she left my apartment. The absence was a weight. Every sound in the hallway made me look up. On the third night, just past 11, I heard a knock, not a polite tap but a quick, urgent rhythm. When I opened the door, Lena was there, her coat unbuttoned, hair windblown, eyes bright in a way that scared me. "I can't sleep," she said. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. She came in without waiting, pacing my living room like she was trying to walk something off. The faint scent of wine clung to her, but she wasn't drunk, just raw. "I saw you today," she said suddenly. "With that girl. The one from the building across the street." My mind scrambled. "She's just a classmate. We were walking. Do you think I'm stupid?" She stopped pacing. "You don't even look at anyone like that." I stared at her. "Lena, you're jealous?" Her breath caught. The words seemed to echo between us. She sank onto the couch, pressing her palms to her knees. "I don't have the right," she whispered. "I know I don't. But the thought of you with someone else." She broke off, shaking her head. I sat down across from her, careful to leave space. "You don't have to pretend with me," I said softly. "I'm not pretending. I'm terrified." She looked up at me, eyes wet but defiant. "I told myself it was harmless. Just coffee. But you're under my skin. And every time I see you, I want..." Her voice cracked. "I want more." The room seemed to tilt. My heart was hammering, but I forced my voice steady. "Then why are you here telling me to stop?" "Because I'm supposed to be better than this." Her hands clenched into fists. "Because you're too young, because people talk, because if my son knew..." She bit down on the rest of the sentence, eyes closing. I moved closer without thinking, until my knees brushed hers. "I'm not a kid," I said quietly. "And you're not a villain. We're just two people who..." I trailed off, afraid to finish. She opened her eyes. "Say it," she whispered. "We want each other," I said. The words hung there like a struck bell. She stared at me, breathing hard, then reached up and touched the side of my face, just her fingertips trembling. "This is a mistake," she murmured. But she didn't pull her hand away. I caught her wrist gently, holding it where it was. She leaned in, only a fraction, but it was enough for me to feel her breath against my mouth. "Lena," I whispered. Outside, a door slammed somewhere down the hall, echoing through the quiet. She flinched. We were inches apart, suspended between surrender and retreat. And then, the next morning I woke to a text from an unknown number. "You and her." "Stop." No name, just that. My stomach dropped. For a second I thought it was a prank, then I noticed the time stamp, 1:47 a.m., the same hour Lena had been in my apartment. I crossed the hall and knocked on her door. She opened it after a long pause, hair tied back, face bare. She looked like she hadn't slept. "You got it too?" she asked before I could speak. She held up her own phone. On the screen. "Everyone knows. Tell your boy to back off." "Who sent it?" I whispered. She shook her head. "I don't know. My ex has been sniffing around, but it could be anyone. Someone saw us. Maybe more than once." The walls of her kitchen felt like they were closing in. All at once the thrill we'd been skating on curdled into something darker. "Lena, if it's him, I can handle him." She cut me off sharply, then softened. But you can't. He's spiteful, and he knows how to hurt people without leaving bruises. I took a step closer. You don't have to protect me. You're 22. She gave a bitter little laugh. Of course I do. For the first time, I felt a flicker of anger. You keep telling me I'm too young, but you're the one sneaking into my apartment at night. You're the one who invited me in. Her eyes flashed, then dimmed. You're right, she said quietly. I did. And now you're paying for my mistake. The words landed like a slap. I turned toward the door, not sure where I was going. She caught my arm. Wait, she said. There's more. I stopped. She hesitated, then spoke so low I had to lean in. My son is coming home. Tonight. He doesn't know. I can't have you here. Not even for coffee. The floor seemed to tilt. You didn't tell me. I didn't tell you a lot of things. Her voice cracked. I thought I could keep you separate from all this. But I can't. For a long moment neither of us moved. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Then she reached up and pressed her palm to my chest, not in affection but in a silent plea. Please, she whispered. Just go. Before it gets worse. I stood there, heart pounding, her hand warm against me. Every instinct told me to stay, to fight for her. But behind her eyes was a fear I hadn't seen before, not about gossip but about real damage. I stepped back. Her hand fell away. She didn't follow. At the doorway I turned once more. Lena! She shook her head slowly. Not now, she said. If you care about me, not now. I spent the day pretending to study, but every sentence blurred. By dusk the sky had gone a flat, bruised gray, the kind of evening when everything feels unfinished. Her blinds were shut. No lights on. I told myself I wouldn't go over. Then I was already knocking. She opened the door a crack, saw me, and stepped aside without a word. Her son's duffel bag was by the couch. A pair of men's shoes sat neatly at the wall. But the apartment was empty except for her. He went out with friends, she said quietly. You shouldn't be here. I needed to see you, I said. My voice sounded rough. I can't do this halfway. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. And what is this exactly? I swallowed. Whatever it is, it's real. And I don't want to hide anymore. She let out a shaky laugh, then covered her mouth. You think this is just hiding? I have a life that's already falling apart. An ex who'd love an excuse to ruin me. A son who still thinks I'm steady. Her eyes glistened. And you're a boy with everything ahead of you. I'm not a boy, I said louder than I meant. I know what I'm choosing. She flinched at my tone, then straightened. Then choose, she whispered. Choose me, and it's not coffee on Sunday mornings. It's lawyers, whispers, maybe my own child hating me. Choose freedom and you can still walk away. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. She wouldn't look at me. I realized she was trembling. I crossed the small space and put my hands on the counter beside her, not touching. I'm not here for a thrill, I said. I'm here because when I'm with you, even in silence, I feel home. Her breath caught. For the first time, she didn't argue. She reached up and touched my face with a palm that was warm and unsteady. You don't know how much I want this, she murmured. But I'm terrified of what it will cost you. I closed my eyes and leaned into her hand. Maybe it's not about cost anymore. She let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Then she slid her fingers to the back of my neck and pulled me closer until our foreheads touched. We stayed like that, breathing the same air, either brave enough to close the last inch. Lena, I whispered. I don't know if I can do this. She whispered back. But I don't want to lose you either. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, her son returning, or maybe no one at all. She drew back slightly, eyes wide, but her hand stayed against mine on the counter. Whatever happened next, we had stepped past the point of pretending I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the hallway felt like the edge of a decision. Around sunrise, I heard a soft knock on my door, not urgent this time, just 2 quiet taps. When I opened it, Lena was there without makeup, hair tucked into a loose braid, eyes tired but clear. "Can we walk?" she asked. We ended up in the small park behind the building. The grass was wet with dew, birds were louder than the traffic. She kept her hands stuffed in her coat pockets, but her shoulder brushed mine as we walked. "My son's leaving again this afternoon," she said after a long silence. "And my ex finally signed the last of the papers. For the first time in years, I'm not anyone's wife. I don't even know who I am without the rules." I kicked at a pebble. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." She glanced at me. "It's scary." "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But I'd rather be scared and honest than safe and pretending." We stopped near a bench under an oak tree. She turned toward me fully, searching my face. "You still want this? Even knowing the mess, the gossip, the age gap? Even knowing I might panic and push you away again?" I took her hands out of her pockets and held them between mine. "I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for you." Her breath trembled out. "You don't know how long it's been since anyone said that." For a second she looked like she might pull back, but then she didn't. She leaned forward, forehead resting against mine just like before, only this time she didn't stop there. Her lips found mine in a soft, hesitant kiss that deepened because either of us wanted it to end. It wasn't a movie moment. It was clumsy and real and tasted like coffee and tears. When we finally drew apart, she stayed close, fingers laced with mine. "This doesn't make everything simple," she whispered. "I know," I said. "But it makes it real." She gave a small, shaky laugh. "Then maybe that's enough for now." We sat on the bench as the sun broke through the clouds, warming the damp wood beneath us. People passed by without giving us a second glance. For the first time, we weren't hiding. She squeezed my hand. "No more just coffee?" she murmured. "No more just coffee," I said. We stayed there in silence, a quiet beginning written on both of our faces. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?